Now, for more on this, former foreign policy advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Callan Glick, who, as I mentioned, was the former policy advisor, is joining us live on World DNA from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us on the show, ma'am.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be with you today.
Now, ma'am, I want to start by asking you, Israel's defense minister, as I mentioned earlier, said that they have withdrawn troops, have pulled out of southern Gaza for future operations. I believe they're trying to regroup and rethink their strategies going forward. Now, how do you think Israel will move forward given the international pressure as well as the domestic pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu?
You know, I think that it's true that Israel is in a complicated situation right now because the United States, by saying you're risking our support if you do certain things that you need to do in order to win, the United States is effectively saying that it's not supporting Israel going forward for various reasons. And so that puts Israel in a position where it has to think through its steps and how it's going to take the actions required in order to win this war. So that's first of all in Gaza, but of course, as you mentioned in your excellent summary of the situation on the ground around Israel, Israel is actually fighting or being attacked from multiple fronts at the same time: Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, even inside of Judea and Samaria, otherwise known as the West Bank, where Israel is getting multiple terrorist attacks a day emanating from those areas, as well as in the south from Yemen, from the Houthis, who are effectively conducting an illegal blockade of the Red Sea through their control of the Bab el-Mandeb. So we're looking at a very complicated strategic position, and most importantly, Iran is threatening to attack Israel directly with ballistic missiles in response to Israel's purported assassination of top Iranian generals who have been directing this multi-front war against Israel from their redoubt in Damascus, Syria. So Israel faces a complicated situation on all fronts, particularly given the United States' new political position, which is antithetical to Israel's very basic strategic requirements.
Right, Ms. Glick, you speak of how Israel is being attacked from all the fronts and the latest threat from Iran of retaliation to Israel. Now, Galan says that the troops have pulled out of Gaza to prepare for future operations and for tactical reasons. The timing is pertinent to note here. It comes day after Iran threatened Israel of retaliation. How do you assess that?
Well, look, I think that what Galan said is accurate. I think that, we have to be prepared for what's coming from the east, from Iran, and from the north, particularly from Lebanon, which is controlled by Iran through Hezbollah. So it gives the troops a chance to regroup, reorganize, redeploy to the north and other battlefields, as well as a chance for the hostages for terrorists deal that the United States is trying to broker with Hamas to work its way through, either up or down. Those talks are now reaching a critical position, a critical stage in Cairo. So I think that Israel doesn't want to be blamed when the talks back down, which we're concerned that they will, because the United States has essentially removed Israel's maneuver room in the negotiations. And so Hamas, from its position, sees no reason to show any flexibility in its demands for a complete Israeli defeat in the war in exchange for some of the hostages returned home. So I think Israel is in a position where right now it's important not to give the United States an excuse to continue blaming us for Hamas's crimes against us, and at the same time reorganize our forces in order to continue to fight, since we continue to be we're continuing to be attacked by Iran and its proxies, and we have to defeat Hamas before we can be safe.
Right. All right, let's also talk about the ceasefire talks as well. What sort of an impact do you think this withdrawal will mean for the ceasefire talks? Netanyahu earlier said that Israel is just a step away from victory and that there will be no ceasefire until all hostages are released. Where do you think things are on that front?
That remains Israel's steady position across the political spectrum. What's different is that the United States seems to have abandoned that position, most notably in its abstention from a UN Security Council resolution that did not link ceasefire in Gaza to the rescue, the release of the hostages being held on by Hamas for now 6 months. So I think the problem here is that the United States seems to be so desperate to end the war that they're willing to abandon the hostages, something that Israel isn't willing to do. So I think The problem here is the American position, which has become so hostile to Israel that's empowering Hamas not to show any flexibility in its positions, either on the ceasefire talks, of course, are a component of the talks for the release of the hostages. That all along there has been a question of what is going to be the price for the release of the hostages, and always the position has been of Israel, and until recently, position of the United States as well, that for a ceasefire to happen, the hostages have to be rescued, and that seemed to no longer be the case when the United States abstained from the UN Security Council resolution that didn't link the two. But that still remains Israel's position.
Right, Ms. Glick, thank you so much for taking our time and joining us here on World DNA.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.